Well,
Hello.
hello.
How's it going today?
Pretty chipper. Went to the gym. Really tired. Took a nap.
Yeah?
Now I'm here.
What book are we reading?
Vampire Academy. I've never read it before, but after the first two chapters, I'm hooked. She read it in school, and when she first started talking about it, I was like, oh, like Twilight. But it's really good.
Are you excited to talk about it today?
I'm very excited. Very awkward, but very excited.
What are we drinking?
Box Malbec. That's what we're drinking.
Cheers. So, we read chapter 1 and 2. So, I'm going to just kind of go over what happened in chapter 1 and then we'll talk about it. And then we'll go over chapter 2 and then we'll talk about that. Okay?
All right.
Okay. So, in chapter 1, we have a pretty strong opening line where Rose is woken up by Lissa. She's having a nightmare about a car crash. And she describes feeling Lissa's fear and seeing images of the dream in her mind. And Rose rushes to wake her up and calm her down. And then her inner monologue reveals that she is a Dampier and Lisa is a Moroi. She insists that Lissa feed from her because she seems weak, and Lissa reveals her fangs and bites Rose. Rose describes the experience as euphoric and better than sex. She also explains that the chemicals in Moroi saliva trigger an endorphin rush, creating a weird, kinky high. And then Lissa goes to make Rose some food, and Rose's inner monologue reveals that they are in Portland on a college campus, and she looks out the window and she sees a silhouette of a man watching her. The man is described as very tall and hiding behind a tree, because that's not creepy or anything.
I feel like it'd be a little more creepy if he was hiding behind a bush.
That's fair. That's a good point. And then she notices that there are other people watching as well. She can tell that the man is a Dampier because her roommate's cat gets spooked, and apparently cats don't like Dampiers. This causes Rose to get spooked as well, and she starts getting ready to flee. She tells Lissa that they have to leave, and Lissa uses compulsion on their roommate to take his car keys. They leave for the car, but Rose is still dizzy from the vampire bite high, and the strange man jumps out from behind a tree, and he's like, hello. Rose describes him as 6'7", with very long hair, brown eyes, and wearing a duster. She realizes that multiple other people are also closing in on them and refers to these people as guardians. She then decides that she's going to fight all 12 of these guardians despite being high on endorphins, and immediately realizes that this was a stupid idea when the tall, hot man almost knocks her on her ass with one hit.
Sounds like a good Friday night.
Thankfully, the same hot man catches her, but then he sees the vampire mark and she gets embarrassed. Rose tries to attack him again, but Lissa sends calming vibes through the bond and she gives up. The tall, hot man introduces himself as Dmitry Belikov and says that he is going to return them to St. Vladimir's. He also addresses Lissa as princess, which gives us some more plot.
At the end, when I read Princess, I like stood up and I was like, "What? She's a princess?" Because it starts out very confusing. They kind of just throw you into the world instead of building it, and it took me a minute to catch on what was going on. It made it even more interesting when you find out they've been besties since like kindergarten. But then what I want to know is, do you think they're that bonded because of her feeding on her, or do you think she was bonded from like the get-go?
That was actually one of the notes that I took was how did they get bonded? I know they've been friends for a really long time, but did they just slowly become bonded? Like, is that a thing that's common?
They did say that it hasn't happened since ancient times, and I don't remember the headmistress's name, nor do I think I could pronounce it. Honestly, a lot of these names are like Russian names. She's an encyclopedia.
I wouldn't say I'm an encyclopedia, but I am very curious how they got bonded and what all that entails, because it kind of feels like Rose feels her thoughts and can occasionally like see out of her eyes and
Feel her
like
body.
yeah, and she like gets sucked into her brain in like a weird like psychic bond. I just want to know how that happened.
I just want to know if Lissa or Lisa,
I think it's Lissa.
I want to know if she can tell right away when Rose is like in her body, because in the second chapter or at the end of the first chapter they get caught by the tall dark man, and on the plane back she said that she felt like she was in her skin and she could feel like everything going on, and she said that Lissa doesn't like when that happens. It feels like it's an invasion of privacy. So I don't think it's in their control either.
Yeah, I feel like whenever Lissa has like strong emotions or something, Rose gets sucked in, it seems. Also, sorry if you hear the dog growling at the cat. The first note that I took on this chapter was that the opening line is I felt her fear before I heard her scream, which I think is a really strong opening line to a book because it really draws your attention in. It's kind of suspenseful. I feel like that's a really strong opener.
No, it definitely sucked me in. I mean, some books it takes me a while to get into them, but right away, right off the bat, I was like, I don't want to put this down.
Yeah, I feel like the author Richelle Mead does a really good job of world building without spending too much time on it. It doesn't feel too rushed to me. It just kind of, you're left to use your own like common sense and reasoning skills to kind of figure things out. And I feel like I almost prefer that to the first two chapters of a book just explaining how the entire world works. The second note that I took is that sex is mentioned on page 3, as well as alcohol and drugs. And this is a children's novel.
Yeah, I remember back in the day reading books like this and thinking, oh, hell yeah, that's badass, or like, that's awesome, or just kind of like it giving me a weird sense of happiness reading those things, like, oh, the adventure, the thrill. And then looking back now, it's like, those are babies. Those are babies. They have no business talking about sex and drugs.
Yeah, I mean, Rose is what, 16 or 17? And I mean, she says that she's never had sex before, but that this vampire bite has to be better than sex. It sounds so like euphoric and like very sexualized. It reminds me a lot of how like 2008, right off the entrails of the first Twilight movie coming out, everybody was just sexualizing vampires constantly, and that was like the big thing.
Yeah, I can definitely see a little bit of that going on here, but as I said, I've only read the first two chapters, so I'm not sure yet, but it does seem like it's going to be a big theme in this.
The next note that I took says, "Why is the cat okay with Maroy but not Dampiers?" And this is referring to Oscar the cat. And Dampiers don't drink blood, so but the Maroy do. So why is he so opposed to the Dampiers, but he likes the Maroy?
Well, I guess I'm still kind of struggling with understanding the difference between the Dampiers and the Moroi.
I also don't think that that has been discussed too much yet. I'm not sure what the difference is either, but I don't think that the Dampiers are fully vampires because when Lissa is weak, Rose gives her blood, but when Rose is weak, Lissa makes her food.
Do you think it's like Skyrim? They just have classifications?
That could be. The next thing I wrote down, did Jeremy ever get his car keys back?
I'd really hope so. I'd really hope so. That poor man.
Also, how does the compulsion work? Lissa used compulsion on him to get him to give her his car keys. Can she just compel anybody? I know it said in the book that some people are more resistant of compulsion than others, but how I have some questions. I want to know how that works.
I don't know. I mean, if you think about it, there's people who are more strong-minded than others, and I'm guessing just the ones with like a weak will and a weak mind are more easy to like overcome. Like if I were to know you were about to compulse me, I'm sure I could like be like, no. But since he was unexpecting and he's a college frat boy probably from what we're reading, he was just probably easy to swoon. Probably could have swooned in without some compulsion.
I really hope he got his car keys back, but it seems unlikely. The next note that I wrote about this chapter just says, "This feels a little gay." I don't know, it just felt a little gay, and it made me think about how there's not really any vampire books that are like a gay main character.
I literally thought the same thing. I was like, whew.
Let's move on to chapter 2.
All right.
For chapter 2, the Guardians take the girls on a plane to Montana. And again, Rose mentions that she can feel Lissa's emotions through the bond. She describes being sucked into Lissa's head and feeling like she's seeing the world through Lissa's eyes. The girls are apparently terrified to go back to the school. She also describes two I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that, Molniha marks on Dimitri's neck, signifying that he's killed two Strigoi, but we don't really get a lot of information on what the Strigoi are. The group gets to the academy and they have to pass through the guards and wards, which are apparently meant to keep Strigoi out. Rose describes the school as sprawling and gothic with church like architecture. Dimitri takes the girls to headmistress Kurova, but they pass through the commons during breakfast time. Understandably, everybody stops to stare at them, and we're introduced to Lissa's cousin Natalie and her ex boyfriend Aaron. Aaron is clearly not over Lissa, even though he's holding hands with another girl. And said girl seems real pissed off about it, understandably so. We get to Kurova's office and we meet Lissa's kind of uncle, Viktor Dashkov. He's described as looking sick, and we find out that his illness has kept him from being the king. Kurova lectures Rose about endangering Lissa by leaving the school, saying that it's the Dampier's responsibility to protect Moroi. Rose insists that she was protecting Lissa by running away, but she doesn't reveal what the danger at the school was. Kurova says that they are going to send Rose away, and Lissa tries to stop her because her parents wanted Rose to be her guardian. Dimitra tells Kurova that the girls have a bond and volunteers to give her extra training sessions. And then Lissa uses a little bit of compulsion and convinces them to let Rose stay. Rose is banned from all social activity and put on probation. Rose gets an attitude again, but then she makes some weird, sexy eye contact with Dimitri and she accepts the offer. Now, I have some thoughts about this chapter. First note that I made is, why is this school so dangerous?
Yeah.
Why are they so afraid to go back to school? Why did they run away?
I really don't have any guesses on that yet, but if anything, it has to do with the opening line, which was,
I felt her fear before I heard her screams.
yeah, I think that definitely has something to do with it. I'm usually pretty good at guessing these things, but I really don't know. In chapter 2, we do find out her Lissa's parents are dead, and that's why it's important that Rose is her guardian. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with it.
Well, when Lissa was having that nightmare, Rose very briefly mentions like contorted metal of a car. And so she's like dreaming about a car crash, is what I assumed. And so, what I would assume from that is that Lissa's parents died in a car crash. She was the only person that survived, maybe.
Are these vampires not like normal vampires? Can I mean like imagine Dracula dying in a car crash. Like
I am not sure how all of it works. I have some questions about the Strigoi and Moroi and what the difference is and why the Strigoi are trying to like murder the Moroi. I are the Strigoi the bad vampires? And it did mention in the book that the Strigoi would love to end the Dragomir line. So does that make Lissa like the last person of her line? If it's a royal line, that's probably a big deal. And she is referred to as a princess. And also the school has wards and guards to keep out the Strigoi. So I'm assuming that the Strigoi are bad vampires, but I want to know what makes them different from Moroi.
okay, so I watched this Netflix show at the beginning of COVID. I don't remember the name of it. It's on Netflix and it's this vampire show. I think it's it has some like weird hazmat name. I don't know. But it's like this outbreak happens and the vampires start to form, but the outbreak started from the Strigoi vampires and they're like these ancient, ugly, just big, scary people, not people, vampires, but there's like a king of them all that like lives somewhere, like we don't know where he is, and like once he dies they all die, but they're all after like everybody who's not them, and I'm wondering if they're after the Dampiers more because maybe they've been after them. Like, I mean, the Strigoi want to be the main vampire race in every other show.
That would make some sense. I want to know what the difference between the Dampiers and the Moroi is, and I also want to know what the difference between Strigoi and Moroi is, what makes them so different. Why are they so afraid of the Strigoi? Obviously, the Strigoi are trying to kill them, but like why? And like, I just have a lot of questions about that. I feel like they didn't really explain the difference between all of the different species, I guess, well enough in the first two chapters, so I'm hoping that we get some more information on that. I also have some questions about why is it the Dampier's duty to protect the Moroi? Because it seems like the Moroi and Dampier seem to be treated very differently, especially when Kurova tells Rose that she put Lissa in danger by leaving the school and that it was Rose's duty as a Dampier to protect Lissa. And Lissa doesn't really seem to get punished at all for leaving the school, and Rose is like heavily punished and almost expelled completely. So I want to know why they have such societal differences. I'm wondering if it's just like are all the Moroi royals?
So it sounds like to me the Dampiers, correct?
I believe
That it sounds like to me the Dampiers are more of like physical, like brute force kind of race, and then the Moroi are like the vampires. And maybe since they, I don't know, like what I'm taking from it is they're two different classes of race, and like in video games, each one has their own specialty. Maybe the Dampier, they were more physically inept to protect the Moroi. But then what I don't get is, I mean, like, if they had compulsion and all this stuff, I don't know why they need protecting, but she is the princess and the last one of like her bloodline. So
how did Dimitri know that they were bonded?
I think Dimitri is low key older than he's saying, but he said he noticed it right off the bat when he met them, like ran into them. And I think it's because he noticed Rose kind of reciprocating everything that Lissa like outwardly expressed.
Yeah, I'm sure that when they, because if Rose can feel Lissa's emotions and get into her head, I'm sure that there were probably some exchanges that were questionable.
What if Dimitri is able to feel what they're feeling in general? Like, what if him and Rose are bonded somehow and he's able to feel what Rose is feeling?
I really like that theory.
Give me all the sexy eye contact.
I also want to know your thoughts on if so Dimitri is described as his being in his mid-20s, and he seems to have taken a special interest in Rose immediately. And you've never read the book. So how does that make you feel? What do you think is going to come from that?
Pedophilia.
Yeah. I also agree. I do remember the first time I read this book when I was in like middle school, probably like 12 years ago or something. I do remember her being in love with her teacher or mentor or whatever he is to her. And it really bothers me that he is in his mid 20s and Rose is 17. I don't like that the main love story of this book is basically pedophilia.
It definitely is a different demon these days. I remember being in school and reading these kind of books and being like, oh my God, that's so hot. I love this random teacher I see passing in the hallway. It's totally plausible. And then, like, looking back now, I'm very happy that didn't happen. Very happy I wasn't pedophiled. Um, but yeah, reading it now, the sexy eye contact, knowing how old Rose is, knowing that this dude is probably, he's probably wise beyond his years. So he has no interest or like no reason to be interested in a 17-year-old. And it does kind of give me the ick. It does kind of give me the ick.
I remember reading, well, I read the books for Pretty Little Liars in school, and I also was really into that TV show when it was popping off in like the eighth grade. And I remember I would watch that show for Arya and Ezra. And Ezra was her teacher. And I loved that show. I thought they were like my favorite couple. I was obsessed with them. And I rewatched that show over the summer last year during COVID. And I thought it was disgusting. What was wrong with that man? And so I'm really hoping that if Richelle Mead insists on having Dimitri be a little pedophile, I really hope that she does it well and that he doesn't like. I hope they don't have sex.
No statutory rape here.
And I don't want to spend this entire 12 book series talking about how I don't like Dimitri because he's a pedophile, so I'm probably not going to bring it up all the time. But I just wanted to make my thoughts known that I have a problem immediately. Just immediately
Part of the
know.
inspiration for this podcast was the fact that we want to go back and read all these books we read in school, and it's just she brought up the fact we're going to be looking back now and being like, oh wow, that's why I am the way I am. Like that's pretty fucked up. Oh, can we? We can't cuss. Okay.
Okay, the last note that I made about chapter 2 was blood whores. Just blood whores with a question mark. Why is it so degrading to let Maroi drink your blood? When Dimitri saw Rose's bite marks on her neck, she immediately got embarrassed and tried to hide it. And when Kurova is threatening to send her away, Rose is like, "What, are you going to send me to be a blood whore?" As if being a blood whore is just the worst thing in the world. And we don't really hear too much about what blood whores are. Like, are they just Dampiers that let Maroi drink from them? I I also want to know why it's so stigmatized and why it's so like bad to be a blood whore. Because if it gives you this euphoric high, it sounds like it'd be pretty good to do during sex. If you're a Dampier having sex with a Maroi, why not just do it? Like, I don't understand why it's this big stigma.
Well, I think if you think about it, back when these books were read, slut shaming was still very culturally okay. Like everybody that when were these books written?
I think the first one, I want to say the first one came out in like 2006 or something. I read it in the 8th grade. So that would have been like 2008,
So
2009.
what I got from the blood horse thing is maybe it's just like you think about it back in the day, women who worked at a brothel or women who were like the ladies of the night were classified as just whores. So maybe the people who are just used for blood or it's like a brothel, like they're blood whores. That's all they're good for. That's all they're used for because it's really degrading to be one for some reason.
Yeah, I'm really excited to continue reading because I have a lot of questions and not a lot of answers. I do think that Richelle Mead did a really good job of world building without making it too like spending 6 pages describing how everything works. I prefer when authors let you kind of use your own context clues and common sense to kind of put the pieces of the world together. Also, the way that Rose describes St. Vladimir's sounds beautiful. I wish that I went to school in a European Gothic church school. That sounds badass.
It sounds like it'd be beautiful, and it sounds like I'd probably still get tired of going to school, but I'd be depressed in a beautiful place.
I want to know how to pronounce the marks that they get when they kill Strigoi. I want to know how to pronounce that. Dimitri has 2 of them because he's killed 2 Strigoi, and there's also a promise mark mention, which I'm assuming is what they get when they become a guardian. I also want to know how someone becomes a guardian. Like, is it just all Dampiers are guardians, or is it only some of them?
At one point in the second chapter, when Dimitri is pleading his case, the Rose should stay at the school. He was like, "It's not very rare to have a woman Moroi Dampiers. Sorry, it's not very common to have a woman Dampiers." And then he brought up that they're all mainly blood whores. So it kind of sounds like it's like earlier civilization before women's rights and everything. Like the Dampiers have less rights.
I wonder if the blood whores are just female Dampiers that didn't want to become a guardian. Because being a guardian sounds exhausting. It sounds like you're sent on all these crazy missions and forced to protect Moroi. And I don't understand if Moroi can use compulsion, and why aren't they protecting themselves? And so I wonder if calling Dampiers that aren't guardians a blood whore is just a way to like degrade them for not protecting the Moroi. Because the Moroi obviously have the highest spot in society in this culture here. And so I wonder if they just expect the Dampiers to devote their lives to protecting them. And then when they don't, they find some way to degrade them and make them feel bad about their choice to not devote their life to them.
Yeah, because the headmistress did say she was gonna get rid of Rose, but she never said how or why. Like she never specified, and now that's kind of leading me to believe that maybe she didn't know exactly what she'd be doing, but it would be non-honorable work, quote unquote.
It's like a dishonorable discharge.
Vampire military.
That I feel like that's basically what the Guardians are. They're like vampire FBI agents or something. Like they just I mean, Dimitri and the other 12 Guardians that were there tracked down these girls. Also, how were they able I mean, I guess Lissa could compulse everybody, but how were they able to like exist on a college campus in Portland undetected with no like IDs or probably either money?
Okay, so hear me out. New theory. All right, so get this. So what if the Strigoi have always been there, always been trying to kill the Moroi, always trying to kill the vampires, and maybe the Guardian, maybe compulsion and all that doesn't work on the Strigoi because they're both vampires. And maybe since the Strigoi are such a more masculine, strong race, they need the Guardians there to combat them. Maybe they're not able to fend for themselves yet against them.
That would make some sense. I'm still wondering about the whole Lissa being a princess and her uncle that's not really her uncle being Prince Victor Dashkov, but he was supposed to be the king, but he can't be the king because he got sick or something. I want to know, are all Moroi royal? And that's why the Dampiers have to protect them?
You know, I kind of picked up on the fact that Lissa might be the last of that bloodline, though. Or was it just the royalty bloodline?
Well, when Kurova was addressing them, she said that the Strigoi would love to finish off the Dragomir line. So that makes me think that Lissa is the last of the Dragomir line. But Victor Dashkov has a different last name and he's also royalty. So I'm thinking that there's probably multiple royal families.
But it also kind of just sounded like Lissa needed a legal guardian.
Speaking of legal guardians, who takes care of Rose?
Where are her parents?
How did Where are her parents? I've got some questions about that. Apparently, she doesn't know her father, and her mom is like a badass guardian. And she asked Kurova if her mom even knew that she had been missing. So what's going on with that? Where is her mom?
Mom. Mom.
Mom. Where are these kids' parents? I think that that's all I have for chapter 1 and 2. We're only at 30 minutes, so do you want to read chapter 3 and discuss, take a little wine break and read another chapter and then come back and talk? Or do you want to wrap it up for the night? Okay, we're in the game. So we're gonna we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna get some more wine and then we'll be back soon with another chapter. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. I did have to split this up into 2 parts because it got pretty long and chaotic towards the end there. So definitely check out part 2. I'm going to upload it right away. Make sure that you check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or here on YouTube. And leave us a comment or a review and tell us if you liked it.